Hello and welcome to episode 36 of A Tonic for Lunacy. I'm your host, Donna, and I'm here with Dahlia today. She's a holistic medical healer, would you say? I don't know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what she does because it's fascinating. But first, I want to know, we chatted a little bit and I was already starting to in my head, picture what your design could be. So now I'm just curious, what is your design?
I am a 5-1 sacral authority generator.
Oh, I knew it was a sacral authority, but I did not guess 5-1. I was going to guess 3-5. Interesting. Okay. Your sacral, but did you say that your solar plexus is defined?
No,
Oh, it's undefined.
undefined.
Oh, got you. Okay, that makes more sense now.
Yeah, very defined ajna and head, and the defined uh oh my gosh,
The
brain just
root,
uh
sacral.
sacral and root,
Mm-hmm.
and which has always been very fun learning about and integrating into my own life, but then also how do I help my clients from that place with like the mind body integration, emotional health, physical health in conjunction with all of that. And that's where it's like I always have to come back to my heart and I always have to come back to my throat because I can get very stuck in my head, which totally works for all of like my credentials and why I continue to learn clearly.
Tell us about you and what brought you here and what you do and who you are and all the things.
Well, what brought me here on this planet, I think, was to help change people's dynamics for them to wake up to their own ability to self heal using integrative medicine, the Eastern and the Western, to use the spiritual and the woo with the science. That is what I do. I bridge the gap between both of those dynamics and bring it in for people very specific to them to help clear out their emotional body and their physical body because it always comes out in different ways. And how I got here was through the medical route. I was raised in a family where my father is a retired neurologist and he is brilliant. So I grew up literally with like a real brain in jelly in the breakfast room in the corner.
I'm so jealous right now.
And I grew up doing, rounds with him. Uh, and he was always showing me it's this part of the brain and this part of the brain and this and this and this and this. And then when I being the spiritual empath that I am and the highly sensitive person who got diagnosed very early, well, as a teenager with anxiety, depression, and just backing up a little bit more, at 12 months old I had a trauma, and that can open up the whole like trauma informed practice, but I had a trauma where I had to make a choice as to whether or not I wanted to stay here or go. And I think it was very much like a meeting of the guides
Mm.
because I think I needed more ammo than what I was originally brought here with. And because of that, I had another diagnosis at 12 months old called baby trick, which is trichotillomania. And that is a body focused repetitive behavior, hair pulling, skin picking, nail biting. I am credentialed to help support all of the things that I've mentioned, uh, mostly because I was just on this health self healing journey. And being raised in the medical model, I had the entire system of doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, medicine management, like therapy that you would see every single week. And that was pretty much like how I lived from 15 till about probably like 35, maybe 33, when I went back and transitioned from being an artist, which was my undergrad degree, the very sensitive,
Mhm.
spiritual, like just express through everything, realizing that it was really hard to make a living like that. And being a depressed, addicted person who was also pulling out her hair in her 20s, like it was just really hard to survive.
Yeah.
And so I went back when I was 30 to get my master's degree, and that is in occupational therapy, which I feel like it was divinely inspired because it was like the skills of the living, which was always so hard for me from like 14 on. And I did that and I loved it and I thought it hung the moon. However, because of my own emotional journey and my ability to really like integrate in a very self-sabotaging way all the pains that I felt outside of myself, uh, it led me down the path of gut health and learning beyond what we learned in the medical model. And so I learned about plant powders. I learned about the gut microbiome. I got trained to be a certified health coach. a holistic health coach, all different kinds of certifications so that I could also use it with my patients as an occupational therapist so that it was within my scope of practice. And in doing that, I did that because I had hired somebody and I did a gut healing protocol and realized that so many of the symptomologies that I experienced was probably because of this gut lining and a sensory nervous system that was highly sensitive.
Mm.
And so now,
Wait, so can I ask you what makes a highly sensitive nervous system?
I think we're all highly sensitive.
I mean, yes, I agree.
First off, if anybody is like attracted to your podcast, you're probably a highly sensitive person. You
Okay,
may
so
not.
here's the thing. We did say this at one point, like I kind of went on a rant, probably like a few months ago where I was like, highly sensitive person, like, is that bullshit or is it real? And what part is real and what part is bullshit, essentially?
I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, cool.
Does it matter?
What?
Does it matter?
No. So no. So to answer your question, no. So where we were at was we were speaking with someone who was a highly sensitive person, but she was using it as a sort of excuse to not have to go out there into the world and do the things. So that was kind of like the premise of the post that I made, and I don't even remember where it is, but that part of that is saying that you're a highly sensitive person is fine if you have the tools to still go out there and do the things. But if you're using it as an excuse to not look at your pain, to not look at your trauma, to not go out there and live in the world, then it's probably bullshit.
So I don't know if it would be bullshit as much as when you go down the traditional medical route and you are looking for support and you're looking for health and you're looking for healing. Traditional healthcare has done a disservice for anybody with emotional stress, emotional 100%. Fatigue, and this can get then diagnosed with anxiety, depression, any kind of mental dis-ease. Many people who have that kind of symptomology are highly sensitive people. Now, I am a huge advocate and believer, like I do not take anyone into my programs if you want to continue living by your stigma or your diagnosis or your label. The whole idea, like I don't say I have a diagnosis of major depressive disorder anymore. I don't. I manage it quite differently because there is a multi-modality toolkit that we know of. And that's one of the reasons I've gotten trained in so many different modalities was partly to help myself heal. But a lot of I have a variety of different programs. I have programs for adults. I have programs for CEOs, business owners who are like building businesses and realize that like their nervous system is fragmented while they're trying to run their business, because we have to come back to the emotions. We have to come back to the body in order to continue operating and not be burnt out. And then I also have programs for parents and kids, and that's called the Superpower Program. And it's really to help, like what I teach is how to turn any sensitivity into your superpower. And from my experience, those who are neurospicy, and I would probably put myself into that category, we just have a deeper purpose on the planet to learn how to find our place of Zen within our body and our nervous system and disconnect from the programming of the stigma and the label. And I've had to call so many people out on their shit. Like, I mean, I have a client in my emotional resilience program, and she has come through so much. And we've worked on the trauma, we've worked on the wounds, the childhood, the shadow stuff. And all of this was foreign to her. She was just tired of the medical model and she was fed up with where she was.
Yeah.
Right. And when we get to that point, usually people are like, I will do whatever you recommend. And what people realize and what they learn is that they have more power to take their power back than they ever realized. Rather than giving our power away to the doctor who says this, just because someone says that, and that could be a doctor, a parent, a family member, somebody passing on the street, it is your choice if you want to own that.
Totally. So then if we have, okay, highly sensitive people, and then are there regular people or are we all highly sensitive people? Maybe regular is the wrong word. I guess what I'm trying to understand is
neurotypical.
Yeah, like are there people whose nervous systems are really just more sensitive than others? Or are we all equally sensitive, but some just have more woundings than others, while others are just, you know, still stuck in that identity of I'm the strong one, everything is fine.
My husband hates the like woke terminology, so I don't ever use it. It's so funny that that's what's coming through, but it's like those who are more awake,
I know I hate that too, but yeah.
more awareness.
Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to. Every single person on the planet is sensitive because we have a gut microbiome that can be permeable because of the toxins and the chemicals and toxic thought patterns that happen in the brain. We have a blood-brain barrier. When things pass that blood-brain barrier and it gets inside, like that is just the sensitivity that we have as humans.
Yeah.
Period. Now, are people aware of that? Not usually, unless they recognize, unless things start to unravel, or you notice not being able to turn off your thoughts at night, or you wake up with like high cortisol. That's what I say, but most people don't ever say that. They're like, I feel stressed. I'm like, okay, you're
Right.
high
Like
cortisol.
how do you know if you wake up with high cortisol?
Well, so cortisol is going to wake you up,
Mm.
right? Um, it's when it's not. How do you know if you have high cortisol? How to know if you have high stress? A, you can feel it in the body. Now, for people who are not in tune with their body, high cortisol gone awry, I will tell you how. You have digestive issues.
Mm.
Your bowels are not consistent. They may be runny, they may be thick, they may be like all sorts of, all out of the place. How do you know? You have sleep disturbances. Your sleep is no longer rest and digest and rejuvenation. It is like you will just know.
Yeah.
Although people don't always associate it with that. And that's where it's like a lot of people will, you know, they'll apply to come into my programs and they will think that they want to do this, this, and this. And I start asking them, because I have a health intake questionnaire, to learn about their lifestyle, their exercise, their attitude, their nutrition, their background, what has worked for you in the past, their trauma, what medicines, what supplements are you taking? Because just because you're taking all the supplements, your body is probably actually taxed. And when I say body, your organs are actually taxed because what you're taking may be too much for you. And you may like, it's not clean enough.
Yeah.
And you're doing too much. Like that can make your cortisol go too high, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different reasons, but people usually see it. You'll see it in skin issues. You'll see it in getting a diagnosis of like some sort of autoimmune, which is actually like allergies is autoimmune. Your body's inability to heal like it used to. Some people will be like, oh, I'm just getting older. No, maybe the water that you're drinking is actually like toxic.
Yeah.
And that's affecting your cortisol because you're not able to detox appropriately anymore. Does that help?
100%. I want to go back to something else that you said about being woke, right? I feel like, at least for me, but I know a lot of people that I've worked with, like as soon as you wake up, everything just kind of like hits you and it's really overwhelming. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm more sensitive. How did I not feel all of this stuff when I wasn't woke? So my question for you is like, it's not really that there's more. It's just like we're still being affected even when we're not woke. It's just being buried, correct? So then how does that come out later? Like what kind of symptoms do you see?
It's called the tipping point. There is just like we can habit stack healthy habits, we can habit stack unhealthy habits that lead us to disconnection from our body, disconnection from our emotions. And it's funny because what people don't realize is, and it's kind of going back to like one of your questions is like, how do you know? There are so many blue lights out there in our home. Like we turn off our internet at night to help block any of the electromagnetic frequencies, because I also have two children here, and my husband, and the dog, and all of that gets affected. Like the brain just gets affected in ways that we don't even imagine. And so what does that look like is Well, people, so I'm going to answer it this way. In healthcare, people will tell you the first symptom or the first sign of a heart attack is the heart attack, right? That's not actually true. The first sign is usually weight gain. It's usually skin issues. It's usually brain fog. It's usually walking around and getting fatigued quicker than you used to. So when it comes to, you're absolutely right that when people do have greater awareness of all of these different like permeable places, and now you're like, everything feels like it's on fire because I'm so aware that I'm so sensitive to everything.
Yes.
That is why in my programs, I always teach energetic boundaries. Because we have to, and I do it in conjunction with like human design, because where you are open is where you're going to be susceptible. And this is my very basic knowledge, by the way. I am not trained by any means.
It's okay.
I'm just saying that part.
Yeah. We don't judge here with the trainings.
So it's, yeah, that's my old history of like healthcare.
Yeah.
So we can be susceptible in so many different ways, but what it looks like, it's unique for everyone, but it can be poor frustration tolerance, difficulty with change. It can be over control. It can be usually go without stopping to pause or breathe, which just tells you you're in a trauma response.
Yes.
So there's a lot of like, I have a program for entrepreneurs called Embody Your Wealth. And so much of it is deprogramming and allowing you to slow down and use science-based and spiritual-based tools to come back into your body through your sensory nervous system, through your gut, through your brain, through your mindset, all the different ways. Because we have to learn how to slow down and just be. We are human beings. We are not human doers. And so typically people will go until there's a diagnosis, until they find themselves in a doctor's office. And they're like, how did I miss this? Well, they didn't. They just ignored it.
Or thought it was normal. Like even I've been doing a lot of reading around like alcohol and what we know alcohol to be and what it is really, and how a lot of the symptoms of like alcohol addiction are just things that we get used to. Like I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm craving a drink to take the edge off, which it creates the edge and then takes it off. It's like such like an addictive substance in that way, but we just become so normalized to the way things feel or the lack thereof that we don't even consider it as, oh, this is a symptom, this is a warning sign that something is happening.
Right. So in my adult programs, and I actually even do this with the kids, the teenage girls, because it matters, is I am teaching them all about their hormone health and their cycles, because the cycles, specifically for females, like, you have the circadian rhythm, which everybody has, male or female. And then you have your if you have your 30-day, give or take, menstrual cycle. But then we also have the moon cycle and the sun cycles and all those different cycles, and it all matters. And I bring that up because when it, like with all the women in my program, they will notice increased frustration, which then leads to anger, which then leads to guilt, potentially shame. And then that leads to mental health issues, that shame portion. But having people start to identify that they are hooked, right? And it's also like in your luteal phase, and them starting to know that like, what they can do about it to help release some of those tensions, but then also to have patience and self-awareness and self-compassion that, what, this is going to pass. And this just really not be a great time to like make any like big decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. So like your luteal phase, you should not make big decisions. I'm like, where am I at right now?
That's the PMS time.
Okay, so that's like, okay, fine. Think I'm past that. What was I going to ask you? Okay, so how, and answer with as little detail as you see fit for you, but I'm just curious, like, if you have your own framework or process for deconditioning. Like, how do you remove yourself from the matrix or from who you've had to be, from those trauma responses, and start to really come back to yourself and who you are?
I love that question. I think that it's like a beautiful, beautiful question. Very much of like, how do you come back home?
Yeah.
How do you come back home in a way that is safe
Yeah.
and long-term sustainable?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
there's no point. I mean, I've had people in my programs that like they came to me and they were doing trauma work for over a year and they were only more traumatized.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and you know, the trauma informed perspective, we have to get into the body to release it. So that very much like goes to like your answer. And well, we take it step by step. But in my one-to-one mentorship, I offer Voxer, which you may be familiar with, right?
Mhm.
It's a walkie-talkie app. It's kind of like WhatsApp, but it's in the moment processing. And then I have a lot of online modules and trainings to teach people how to navigate their brain when the big feelings come up, because that's actually what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because not knowing how is what leads us to, and I'm like, I think I've just passed like 4 years or 5 years sober. I don't know anymore. So it's like, it's been a whole journey. Um, but learning how to increase the emotional intelligence is where we go first.
Yeah.
And depending on the person, it's naming the emotions correctly without over identifying with them and finding the love in the process. So, for example, I have a new client in my program who's actually a very sweet friend of mine. And in emotional resilience, which is my 4 or 6 month program to take your power back, right? And somebody who is traumatized, and here's like a pro tip for anybody listening. If you have trauma in your past and you are learning how to work with emotions, don't go to the crappy emotions first, because that's not going to be of highest service for you or your soul. And so for her, what we've actually been doing is focusing on the positive emotions from this emotions glossary that I teach people how to use. And I have specific protocols that I recommend how they do it for them. And it is very individualized because everybody comes with their own bag of tricks and
Yeah.
everybody comes with their own bag of baggage. And when when your brain is used to that sympathetic response, that fight or flight, that's where you're going to want to go back to, even if it works for you. And so learning how to separate that and come into a different state of being within your body, within your mind, happens because of the positive emotions.
See, that's so different from what I'm used to. Like, I'm such a Scorpio and like a potential masochist, whatever. But like I immediately go to like the negative and I'm like, okay, how can I make this feel the worst? Like, let me experience the deepest, worst pain first and know that I can come out of it. And then I can, slowly move towards the positive. But lately I've been finding that like it's hard for me to get really painful. It's almost like I've gone too painful and now I can't go down any deeper. But I like that kind of change of pace of maybe going positive first and letting that neutralize the nervous system and then letting that go where it may.
And part of that is a gratitude practice. And it's not just like I'm grateful for this or for that or for that. Like, yes, that is true. But also like, I will do it when I'm swimming. And it's like, I am grateful for my beautiful body. I am grateful for my brain that continues to thrive and heal. I am grateful for my ability to move through tough emotions and come out on the other side. That is why that adult program is called emotional resilience. The trouble is we have that negativity bias. It is within us. And so when people go to the negative, I mean, we don't need help with that. No one needs help with that.
Right.
Now, what people need help with is how to tease it apart, to figure out what is important to remove from that, to learn from, so that we're not constantly hooked and operating from the wounding place, right? Like that is absolutely required. However, most people need support to look at what is working and to look at and feel like immense gratitude, like heart opening gratitude. And the reason that that's important is because, you know, I've heard in some, and I've read in like different literature and like, you know, like psychological literature, psychosocial type of perspectives is very much the deeper that you can feel the pain, the higher you can go with the joy, so to speak.
Mhm.
If you can't get out of that, it's really challenging to feel the other. And as much joy that you can experience and actually experience in your body, your pain is going to get transformed that way.
I find that feeling joy is really difficult. Like it's more of like a nervous system like activation response than feeling the pain. And I think maybe that comes, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think,
It's pretty difficult, just so you know.
yeah, like I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but how would you suggest someone like when you say gratitude, I'm like, oh, this is
I
like
know.
law of attraction shit. Just be grateful for it. It's so hard to be grateful. Like I had to teach myself how to be grateful over like months and months and months. And still, even sometimes when I do it, I feel so stupid and I feel like it's a cop out. And I do find it hard to like really feel into the positive because I'm so used to feeling into the negative
Which is exactly why you went to the negative and you were like, I can feel that all day.
all day. I love it.
Well, the body may not like it. You may like it, but
Sure.
internal organs are going to integrate that, and your body keeps the score. It's going to keep hold of that trauma. And in order to move that out, like it's going to require more work when people continue on that neural pathway. And so
Yeah.
everything you do is brain related. So, you know, your question of like, well, how do you stop that neural pathway and jump onto another?
Mhm.
I say this analogy quite often. I say, imagine, okay, so for you, imagine that like that negative neural pathway. And because of, I'm like, I can see the myelin sheath. I can see like, you know, it working together. And it's like fruits and vegetables that make it so strong and blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. Okay. So I won't go off on that. When you have that neural pathway, it is that myelin sheath. It's like a superhighway. It is thick, it is strong, it is consistent. There are no holes in it. It is not permeable. Like you know what to do, you know what to expect, even if at the end of the road is like doom and gloom.
Yep.
You know what to do with it. So what I say is like jumping off on a feeder road of not toxic positivity. That's not what we're talking about here. Like this is real. And that's where Voxer support really makes a difference because I walk people through this because I ask them to, and this is just where my zone of genius comes in. It's like, we have to take a step back. We have to slow the train down and we have to start looking at a little bit of the flowers. And we don't have to look at all the flowers. Let's just pick one. And it's so many people just like want to do it all now fast and be done. But if we are building a new superhighway from that feeder road, we have to do it over and over and over. And what you referred to in the sense of like, right? Like it's a speed bump on that feeder road.
Yeah.
For you, that's also a barrier to entry. And so what I would be doing with you is like, okay, what comes up for you in your thought pattern when you hear the word gratitude? Because there's something underneath that. And until that is actually dealt with, it's going to continue to be a roadblock on that feeder road. And then when we clear that, it's easier to access maybe just one positive emotion. Maybe it's okay, not gratitude, not joy. Maybe it's
Pleasure.
that's where I was going. The easiest way to explain it is like a new mom feeling. The
Yeah.
or a new relationship feeling, the oxytocin, that's pleasure. So that is created outside of you, but it's the hormones that are happening inside. And so learning how, and that was the very first month in my Embody Your Wealth program, was like, I am going to teach you how to create oxytocin on purpose. Because if we can learn how to do that, your experience with your work, with your life, with your family, with yourself will be transformed. And that's long lasting. And I had one of the women in that program, she said to me, I do a lot with the internal body system. So we have movement medicine once a month, and it's clearing out the trauma, very gentle. It's a combination of energy work, breath work, movement based activities that is good for everybody to open up the chakras, to open up all those human design centers, just like let things flow, because that's where creativity is, which is the opposite of anxiousness. Right. So she said to me that for the first time, she wrote an email to her list and it felt easy. It felt good. And she was so shocked that it didn't take as much time as it needed to. And it's because she did some of those systems that I've been teaching her to do. And she listened to herself. And having that response, like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. It's like letting it be easy because you're following your own guidance instead of something that's coming from out there. Yeah. I love
that was
that.
probably a roundabout way to answer your question, but did that make sense?
No, that's fine. Yeah. Totally. So can you tell us a little bit about that program that you have, the Wealth Embodiment? Is that what it was called?
Embody Your Wealth. Yeah, it is a group program. It is 4 months long. We have three group sessions a month. The first one is hot seat coaching on a specific topic. So the first month is vagus nervous system regulation 101, like all the basic foundations. Month 2 is about mindset and emotional health, because what gets in the way are both of those things. And usually when our mindset gets all jacked up, it's usually coming from an emotional place. And so teaching people how to have that emotional intelligence, and I walk them through how to use the tools. Everyone has access to my portal of resources in Wisdom of the Body. And that's where it's like, we are just walking step by step. And then month 3, which we are going to be going into, is gut health, because in order to be a clear channel for our business, for ourselves, for our relationship, we have to clean up the internal ecosystem. And it doesn't have to be like a life, I'm not telling them to like eat all gluten-free or like do like, it's going to be very specific for them, because this is also a short program. And yes, 4 months is a short program. But it's also long enough where you can start to make tangible changes and steps towards progress. So the whole premise of this program was built because when I transitioned out of healthcare into this online coaching, yes, I built my first year into a 6-figure year. And I did that because I always knew the tools to come back to my body, to come back to my emotional health, because I've been doing that for over a decade. And most people don't know how. And they keep trying on all sorts of different things. And so this is the program to teach you like the foundational tools that are really going to help make a difference for neural reprogramming, for DNA restructuring, and everybody walks away with their own regulation roadmap. And that is what I presented in month 1. And so every single month, like, everybody's filling different things out for them based on what they've tried, because just because I give you here's a perfect example, an oxytocin activity, like go jump on the rebounder for 3 minutes. One person will do it and be like, I feel like Superwoman, right? And the other person is like, I feel nothing.
And I just peed my pants.
Exactly. Totally. So, it looks differently to each person. And so for the person not tackling the pee in your pants, because that would have a different conversation.
A whole other issue.
Well, there's actually, there's bladder irritants that can cause that to happen too. But anyways. The point is like, with a rebounder, for example, like, okay, so for the person who didn't feel anything for like the 3 minutes, or it wasn't enough, or it didn't get you to your happy place, because that's really the intention, put on a music that makes you feel so amazing and jump to that, dance to that. And don't do it for 3 minutes, maybe like do 2 songs worth. So when we're looking at implementing tools, the important thing to look at is intensity. Maybe you need to jump harder or higher, right? Maybe you need like different things. And intensity, I just had a little brain fart. Duration, length of time, shorter, longer, or the tool. So maybe for that person, the rebounder is not totally what they need, and maybe they need something like the Bosu ball upside down,
Right.
where you trigger your balance and your cerebellum, right? And so that's where it's like everything I do is very like brain focused, depending on their answers in the health intake questionnaire that happens when people get started. Does that help?
Yes, that sounds fascinating and amazing. Like, I'm so intrigued with the brain and how everything kind of works together. So that is fascinating for me. And I love the way that you bring everything together, like all of these different modalities, and really just create something that includes all of them, because we're all so different, and like we relate so much to this thing and maybe not this thing, and maybe we didn't try that, or maybe we didn't think of it this way. So I love bringing things together like that. My last question for you is, like, you talked a lot about emotional health and emotional stability. What was the word? I can't remember the word you used.
Intelligence.
Intelligence. What does that mean? Like, can you give us an example of what it means to have emotional intelligence?
What does it mean to be emotionally intelligent? Well, first I'm going to start with the resilience part.
Yeah.
Resiliency means you can get back up. How quickly can you get back up? It's going to depend very much on your emotional intelligence. Do you get sucked in, or can you observe, be aware? This is the emotional intelligent part.
Okay.
Name it correctly, maybe have a shift in perspective of how it could be helping and supporting. So it's like awareness is always key.
Yeah.
What I saw happen in Embody Your Wealth, because this is the first round that I've done. And it's for the game changer out there, for the helper, the healer, the healthcare professional, the CEO who wants to build from a very embodied place and not be fragmented in their health and wellness and their mindset while serving, because we can't serve from an empty cup. We have to continue to fill up our vessel. And so many times the emotional piece is what steals everybody's energy. Because compounding emotions, we make stories about the emotion. And then by the time we've made our fourth story, we've missed the very first emotion. And so the emotion that was actually usually disappointment because of an expectation is now frustration, which is then turned to anger. And now you're having a fight with your husband.
Yeah.
Because you had an expectation.
Right.
So when you can break it down, it is so much easier to stop that train early on. And I don't do this perfectly. Most people don't. We still get hooked.
Yeah.
Right. But the more often than not, if we can break it down and come back to those primary emotions, anger is not one of them. And this has been really fun with my husband, because he's like, "Are you mad?" and I'm like, "That's not a real emotion."
What is
He's learning a lot.
Yeah, what is, if anger is not a real emotion, then what is, mad?
Anger is definitely a very real emotion, but it's also secondary or even tertiary, depending on you.
Right. So let's say you do have this emotion of like, hey, I'm angry right now. I know it depends on like the situation, but like, what would I start to do with that?
Always just have the awareness. I always recommend journaling, or like,
Okay.
there's this reparenting exercise that I have all of my clients do. And I teach them this very early on. And it is like, okay, so like for me, it'd be like, Dahlia, I love you, even though you're hooked right now and you're experiencing anger, and you are really trying not to like yell at anyone, because let's just face it, we're human. I still love you. And I still know that you are doing an amazing job. And I know that like something is coming up for you and it can be okay.
Yeah.
Be parent and tell ourselves what we need to hear, what we needed to hear from that childhood place, because usually when we're hooked, it's a childhood wound.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. When we're hooked, it's a childhood wound. I like what you said about you're experiencing anger, not I am angry, right? Like that's such a strong identification with the emotion rather than this is what I'm experiencing, which makes me feel like, oh, okay, this will pass.
Right. And that's coming full circle, not self-identifying with a feeling, a diagnosis,
Mm,
as an HSP. It doesn't actually really matter. We have to be able to create space between that. And so for me, I am very wildly careful about what I say, because I've grown up and it was like, I am addicted. I am in recovery. I am bald. I am this. I am depressed. I am, I am my diagnosis. No, God, no.
right.
But it
Right.
took me decades.
Yeah. I mean, that does make a dating profile very interesting, but
No.
yeah, I agree with you. We are not these things. I love that. Thank you so much. This is fascinating. I really, really enjoy talking to you. Do you have any, like, can you tell us about what you have currently, your offers for anybody that's listening and wants to learn more?
Absolutely. So let's start with Embody Your Wealth. That is I have a variety of different programs right now. What I am just very much so passionate about, because it's where we are astrologically for everybody who is waking up. Embody Your Wealth for the high achieving game changer CEO healer out there who wants to put their body, their emotions, their mindset first along with their business so that their business doesn't burn them out. That is an amazing program. I have emotional resilience, which I will always continue to run because people just need that program. And it is like every single tool that I have ever been trained in. And it's the program that I wish I had when I was struggling.
Yeah.
And I know that people will like hear my story and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I suffer with depression. Like that is the program, right? Like let's smash that stigma, and it does work.
Yeah.
And the parent-child program, that's the superpower program for kids, which
Yeah.
I love. I only hold a space for about 4 people every 6 months, and many of those people will sign on for like year-long contracts. And so right now I may be coming up on like 1 opening. So if that intrigues you, let me know. I have applications for the longer term programs.
Okay.
The one that I love so much is Wisdom of the Body. And that is just it's like integrative medicine for, it's 6 weeks. It's shorter term. It's Voxer support. It's one-to-one sessions. And it's really just to like jumpstart where you're at to
Cool.
really figure out like how to continue moving forward and learn a lot of the knowledge that I have. And everybody gets access to a number of my portals of videos, trainings, all of that stuff. And you can just consume that as much as you want, because we have to learn how. And that's where most people get stuck.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. Because it sounds so easy. Like, oh, I just have to be emotionally resilient and intelligent and I have to deal with my emotions. But how? How do I do it?
Yeah, I mean, if you're living on a Caribbean island by yourself and you're like unattached to people, then that's a lot easier. But if you're
Yeah.
like in the world, developing relationships and have family and have children and have significant others, we definitely need to learn how to do this. Otherwise, those individuals will suffer because of our own wounding.
Yeah.
And that is not fair. And so for anybody who wants to get a taste of how I work with my clients, I have a free 3 brain optimization toolkit. It's 3 steps, and it is breathwork and energy work meditation that was channeled from higher realms, and it's absolutely amazing. It is movement medicine to move trauma through your body, and I always start with education because in my human design, I'm a natural teacher, and so I just love teaching. And then the third part is a nutrition guide for mental health, and it has a shopping guide and some quick
Cool.
tips like how to help. And so if you are interested in that, you can always go to my website or Instagram, or you'll have the link in the show notes.
Yeah. I'll put the link in the show notes. That's awesome. That's free, you said?
It's free.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so I will put all of Dahlia's information in the show notes, and anyone who wants to, please reach out to her. Thank you so much. This was enlightening. It was great to meet you.
It was so wonderful meeting you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
And I love your hamsa in the back. That is just so
Oh.
beautiful. And staring at it like so much. Yeah. Thank you. And I just hope that anybody who, listened to this, if anything I said spoke to you, like definitely just reach out. You can find me at holistic.medical.healing on Instagram.
Yep, I will share that Instagram as well.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're so welcome.
Bye-bye.